Deaths in Glenmorach Manor, a fiction novel. Written by Shirley, read by Sir Lawrence Olivier. This audiobook was narrated using synthetic voice technology provided by 11 Labs. Chapter 6. 3 years ago. The morning at Glenmorach Manor was quiet, inviting a rare moment of stillness. The sun had just begun to rise, its soft light streaming through the breakfast nook's large windows. Lord Wallace sat at the long, polished table, his usual moody presence softened by the early glow. Though his wheelchair often seemed to isolate him, today there was a subtle shift. He was in a better mood, something uncommon these days. His request for Rosy to join him felt like a small but meaningful change. Rosy, come sit with me this morning. I thought you might enjoy a proper breakfast instead of running around after me all the time. Rosy had long grown used to Lord Wallace's moods. Impatient, distant, rarely warm. But his invitation caught her off guard, and for the first time, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Perhaps after all the time she had spent caring for him, his hardened edges were finally beginning to soften. She smiled, her expression gentle. She replied, walking toward the table. Thank you, my lord. I'd be happy to join you. She sat across from him, the only sound being the quiet clink of silverware. They began eating breakfast in relative silence, since their stress had subsided greatly in previous weeks. Rosy saw that Lord Wallace appeared more relaxed, his piercing gaze less judgmental and more welcoming of her presence. The silence was pleasant as they ate, but it would soon change. The door to the breakfast nook creaked open and a figure stepped inside. Benjamin, Lord Wallace's oldest son, entered the room with an air of casual confidence. He was dressed in a well-tailored suit, his dark, wavy hair effortlessly falling into place, and his presence filled the room with a certain energy. Rosy, who had been stirring her tea absent-mindedly, looked up at him and felt her heart skip a beat. Benjamin caught her gaze and smiled, his warm expression instantly drawing her in. He was handsome, of course, but it wasn't just his looks that had Rosy's attention. It was his charm, the ease with which he carried himself, and the way his eyes seemed to spark with intelligence. This was the man she had been waiting for, the man she had carefully crafted a plan around. Behind Benjamin, his two siblings, Robert and Eleanor, stepped in. Lord Wallace invited his 3 children to join him and Rosy for breakfast, his tone less formal than usual. My children, come, join us for breakfast. It seems Rosy and I are having quite a peaceful meal this morning. Benjamin's smile widened as he turned to his father. I would love to, Papa. He pulled out a chair and sat down in front of Rosy, his posture relaxed but assertive. But Robert declined, saying he had to leave for the vineyard as there was work that couldn't wait, and he didn't want Anthony to wait too long for him. I'll just grab my breakfast to take with me. But thank you, Papa. I must leave now. I just wanted to say goodbye. Lady Eleanor, on the other hand, did not hesitate when her father invited her to join them. Good morning, Papa, she said to her father, kissing him on both cheeks before turning to say hello to Rosy. Hello, Rosy. How have you been? Rosy replied with a polite smile. I'm doing all right, Lady Eleanor, thank you. I hope you're well, too. Though she couldn't shake the feeling that Lady Eleanor had never truly made an effort to be kind to her, Rosy knew she had to play her part properly, especially in front of Lord Wallace and Benjamin. Shortly, Rosy's attention went back to Benjamin. Her heart fluttered in her chest as she tried to keep her composure. This was the moment she had been working toward, though she hadn't expected it to feel so charged. With him sitting so close, the weight of her plan suddenly seemed heavier, more real. Benjamin's presence was both thrilling and intimidating. As they began eating, the conversation took a natural turn. Lord Wallace and Benjamin discussed a few matters related to the business and estate, But Rosy's attention was more focused on Benjamin than on the conversation at hand. She couldn't help but notice how easily he spoke, how his voice carried a warm, approachable tone. She had always heard stories of the Wallace family's reputation. Benjamin's charm was no myth. It wasn't long before Benjamin turned his attention to Rosy, his smile taking on a more personal note. Benjamin asked, his voice low and friendly. "You've been with us for a while now, haven't you, Rosy? I've heard nothing but good things about you from the start." Rosy felt a blush rise in her cheeks at the sudden attention. Her eyes met his, and she gave a modest smile, feeling a flutter of excitement in her chest. "Yes, Mr. Benjamin. It's almost 6 months now," she replied, her voice steady, though inside she was feeling the first stirrings of something more. "I've been very grateful for the opportunity to work here. Lord Wallace is a fascinating man to care for." Benjamin chuckled, a sound that seemed to warm the entire room. "My father can be a bit difficult, I'll admit, but I know how much he appreciates your hard work." He turned to Lord Wallace then, a hint of playful affection in his tone. "Isn't that right, Papa?" Lord Wallace nodded slightly, though his expression remained largely neutral. He muttered, "She's been competent." But Rosy noticed the subtle shift in his tone, a softening, an acknowledgement she hadn't heard before. Benjamin turned back to Rosy, his smile now more direct. "I must say I'm impressed. It's not an easy job, I'm sure," he said with a slight tilt of his head, his dark eyes gleaming with sincerity. Rosy felt her heart skip a beat. Compliments from Benjamin were like a gift she hadn't expected so soon. She had been trying to impress him for months, but now, with his words, the reality of her plan seemed to shift. This wasn't just about gaining Lord Wallace's trust anymore. It was about making Benjamin notice her. She replied, trying to keep her voice as calm and collected as possible. "It's important to me that I'm doing my best for Lord Wallace." Benjamin leaned back in his chair slightly, his gaze softening as he studied her. "I can tell. It's rare to find someone so dedicated to their work. You've earned my respect, Rosy." Rosy felt a surge of satisfaction at his words, her mind spinning. She had worked hard to present herself as the perfect, devoted caregiver, and now Benjamin had recognized it. His respect, even if it might be short-lived, was the first sign that her efforts were being noticed by the right person. It wasn't just admiration for her work. There was something more behind his words. Something deeper. As Benjamin continued speaking with Lord Wallace, Rosy allowed herself a moment to savor the compliment. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. She had earned Benjamin's respect, but she was already thinking further ahead. She needed his admiration, his affection. This was just the beginning. As the conversation went on, Eleanor asked her father for permission to leave early. "Papa, brother, I need to leave now for my training. Thank you for the lovely breakfast," Eleanor said quickly, always seeming so eager for her horse training. Rosy felt a subtle shift in the dynamics of the breakfast. It was no longer just about Lord Wallace. It was about her future, about the plans she had so carefully set in motion. And in that moment, as Benjamin's gaze flickered to her once more, she felt a sense of confidence growing inside her. She was one step closer to her goal. Part 2. The house had fallen quiet, with a stillness that could only come after hours of calm. The evening had been quiet, with Lord Wallace retiring to his room earlier than usual, leaving Rosy to enjoy the freedom that came with the night. After making sure he was comfortable and deeply asleep, Rosy felt a familiar sense of release. She was free to do as she pleased, with no duties or obligations for the moment. Her thoughts were far from the ordinary. The weight of the long day had left her feeling restless. There was an emptiness inside her, a thirst that went beyond the physical, something she needed to fill. She stood from her bed, stretching her arms above her head. Her eyes drifted to the clock on the mantel, noting how late it had become. A glass of juice sounded refreshing, and she decided to make her way to the kitchen. As she walked through the darkened halls of the manor, she couldn't help but feel the stillness that wrapped around the place. The walls, once alive with the buzz of family life, now seemed muted. The night seemed hers to own. The kitchen was dark, cold, and quiet. Rosy poured herself a fresh glass of orange juice, savoring the cool, refreshing sensation as it slid down her throat. It was simple, but it gave her the energy she needed for what was about to happen. Her eyes flicked toward the hallway and the door that led to the library. She was granted permission by Lord Wallace himself to explore the vast collection of books there. She eased through the big wooden doors, their quiet creak announcing her arrival. The library had that same familiar magic, towering shelves stuffed with books on anything she could think of, and the soft glow of a single lamp throwing shadows onto the walls. It was calm and quiet, but tonight it wasn't just the books that caught her attention. Benjamin was standing near one of the shelves, his back turned to her. He appeared to be absorbed in something, likely reading or perhaps looking for a particular volume. But there was a certain tension in the air as her gaze lingered on him. His posture was relaxed but purposeful, with his dark hair a little messy, and his casual outfit making it seem like he'd just stepped out of his study for a quick break. Rosy felt a small flutter in her chest. This was not how she had imagined her night would go, but the chance to be alone with Benjamin was something she had been craving for weeks. The idea of spending time with him outside of the daily routines and formalities filled her with a mix of anticipation and excitement. For a moment, she considered turning around and leaving. She was already in her nightdress. Initially, she had intended to borrow a book from the library to read in her room. For a moment, she felt it would be inappropriate to face Benjamin in her nightdress. However, her heart and mind told her otherwise. Besides, Benjamin had already caught sight of her and called out to her. "Rosy?" Benjamin's voice broke the silence. She froze for a moment, then composed herself. Her steps were deliberate as she moved toward him, her heart pounding in her chest. She replied softly, her voice taking on a warm tone. "Mr. Benjamin, I didn't expect to find you here." He looked up, a slow smile spreading across his face as he took in her presence. His eyes, slightly hazy from the whiskey he had been drinking earlier, seemed to soften as they met hers. "I'm just finishing up here. Wasn't planning on being here long, just needed a little quiet time after everything. You don't mind, do you?" he said, his words a bit slurred but still clear. Rosy shook her head, her lips curling into a smile. "No, of course not. It's your home." Benjamin chuckled, shaking his head as he closed the book in his hands. "That's true. I suppose I just find myself wandering here sometimes when I need to clear my head." He looked at her more intently now, his gaze lingering for a moment longer than necessary. "It's nice to see you here, though. Haven't really had a chance to talk to you much." The space between them felt charged now, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Rosy felt her pulse quicken. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The chance to make him see her as something more than just a caregiver, more than just someone who worked in the shadows of his family's world. "I've been meaning to talk to you too," Rosy said, her voice soft and almost teasing. She took a step closer to him, her body language casual but deliberate, her eyes never leaving his. "I've seen you around the manor." "Of course. But we've never had a chance to converse. I suppose your life keeps you busy." Benjamin raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "It does. But I can't say I haven't noticed you working around here. Seems like you enjoy what you do, don't you, Rosy?" Rosy nodded, a small, confident smile playing on her lips. "It's been quite an experience, I must say. I've grown quite fond of the work. Benjamin's eyes softened. I've seen that. Everyone says you're exceptional at what you do. I admire that, truly. He paused, the words slipping out more easily now. Rosy's heart fluttered at the compliment. She knew this was the perfect moment to take the next step. She leaned in just slightly, in her sheer nightdress, her figure looking more inviting in Benjamin's eyes, while her eyes not shying away from his. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. That means a lot to me. The tension between them grew. Benjamin seemed to sway slightly as he stood, perhaps from the whiskey, but his eyes were locked on her, focused. He saw Rosy in her nightdress as incredibly sensual beneath the candlelight. You know, I can't help but notice how beautiful you are. You've got this quiet confidence about you. It's kind of captivating. Rosy felt a rush of satisfaction. This was the moment she had worked for, the moment when her plan began to come to fruition. She smiled coyly, stepping just a little closer, her voice soft and inviting. I think you might be the first to tell me that. Benjamin seemed to falter slightly, his steps unsure but still drawn to her. He took a deep breath, his eyes darkening, and before he could stop himself, he reached out to her and pressed her body against his. His fingers grazing her skin with a tenderness that sent a jolt through Rosy's body. The intensity in his eyes was unmistakable now. He leaned in, his lips brushing against hers in a soft, tentative kiss. The heat between them surged as Rosy responded, her body instinctively pressing even closer to him. The kiss deepened, more urgent now, as if the quiet of the night and the whiskey clouding Benjamin's mind had granted them both permission to give in to what they had both been feeling. After that long, lingering kiss, Benjamin pulled back for a moment, his breath uneven as he looked at her, his words slurring slightly. You're incredible, Rosy. I never knew. Rosy smiled, her heart racing as she savored the victory. This was just the beginning. Benjamin was exactly where she wanted him, wrapped around her fingers. She placed a hand on his chest, gently pushing him back toward the shelves, her voice low and seductive. I'm flattered you finally noticed me. I think we both know. This is just the start of something more, she said, her words laced with intent. And in that quiet, intimate moment in the library, Rosy knew she had crossed a line. The plan she had carefully orchestrated had finally taken root. Part 3. The next morning, the light filtering through the tall windows of Benjamin's study cast long, delicate shadows across the polished wood floor. He sat by the window of his study, staring out, his mind tangled with thoughts of the night before. The weight of what had happened with Rosy lingered, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd crossed a line. His head was still a little foggy from the booze, and the guilt hit him hard, sinking deep into his chest. How had he let it happen? And why did it feel like something had shifted? Something he couldn't quite name. When he entered Lord Wallace's study, he found Rosy already there, standing by the desk, assisting with the day's reports. She didn't look at him, her focus on the papers in front of her, but Benjamin could sense her presence like a pulse in the room. He shifted uncomfortably, feeling the awkwardness hang in the air between them like a dense fog. Rosy's heart skipped a beat when she saw him enter. She had expected this. She could tell immediately from the way Benjamin's eyes avoided hers, and the tension in his posture that he regretted last night. He was acting as if nothing had happened, that she could see through it. He was trying to put up a wall between them. Rosy smirked inwardly, knowing just how to handle this. She couldn't let him pull away, not after everything she'd set into motion. She straightened and approached Lord Wallace, maintaining an air of calm professionalism as she spoke to him. Her movements were smooth, effortless, like she was simply following through with her duties. Nothing more, nothing less. But beneath the surface, her mind was calculating. She needed Benjamin to stay comfortable around her, needed him to keep that closeness. It was important for her plan. Lord Wallace continued reading through the reports, engrossed in his work. Benjamin, standing off to the side, finally mustered the courage to approach Rosy. His steps were hesitant, his gaze still downcast. He leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. "I apologize about last night. I didn't mean to be disrespectful to you." Rosy didn't flinch. She didn't break her composure. She didn't even glance up from the report she was handing Lord Wallace. Instead, she replied with the sweetest, most innocent smile. "Don't be sorry, because I'm not." She whispered back, her voice warm, as if the words had never been spoken. Benjamin froze, a shiver running through him at her words. It felt like he was stuck between two forces, the guilt weighing him down, and the magnetic pull Rosy had on him. Before he could say anything, she chimed in again, her tone playful and light. He whispered, stepping closer to her. "I was feeling a tad woozy last night. I didn't have a clue what I'd done." Rosy turned toward him, her expression playful, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "Do you need me to remind you?" She teased, her flirty tone dripping with suggestion. She glanced at him for a beat longer before turning away smoothly, leaving him speechless. Benjamin froze, unsure what to do. He felt the warmth in his chest and couldn't ignore the pull she had on him. As she walked away, his thoughts raced. He wanted to forget it all, what he considered a mistake. But every time he saw Rosy, every time she drew him in without even trying, it got harder to shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the one calling the shots. Over the next few days, Rosy found herself subtly, carefully, making her presence known around Benjamin. Every word she spoke seemed to have just the right amount of warmth and intent, every glance from her designed to draw his attention. She knew what she was doing, and Benjamin couldn't seem to shake her from his mind. She was always there, quiet, confident, alluring. One afternoon, Rosy moved gracefully between the flower beds in the garden. The air was fresh with the scent of jasmine and roses, but it wasn't the flowers that caught her attention today. It was Benjamin, who had wandered out into the garden in search of something, perhaps to clear his head. Rosy was picking flowers for the house. When she saw the young heir, Rosy watched him for a moment, noticing the way his gaze lingered on the horizon, lost in thought. She could see the discomfort written all over him, as if he couldn't quite decide whether to speak to her or avoid her altogether. Unexpectedly, Benjamin came upon her. She didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled warmly, greeting him like an old friend. "Benjamin, it's such a lovely day, isn't it? Perfect for a walk. I'm sure you must be tired from all the work." She smirked, knowing this was the perfect moment to make her next move. She approached him slowly, and when she was close enough, she leaned in, her voice a whisper in the soft breeze. "Benjamin, I've been thinking about you. Us." Benjamin blinked at her, caught off guard by the suddenness of her approach. The words tumbled from his lips before he could stop them, his tone low, filled with hesitancy. "Rosy, there's something I need to say. Something I haven't been able to figure out until now. I think we need to talk." Rosy felt a sudden pang of anticipation. She had been waiting for this moment, for Benjamin to finally voice the unspoken tension between them. But what he said next, she hadn't expected it. Before he could continue, she placed a hand gently on his chest, her fingers tracing the fabric of his shirt, sending a shiver through his body. Rosy moved closer, almost imperceptibly, her body brushing against his. And before he could react, she tilted her head up, her lips dangerously close to his. But Benjamin, his heart hammering in his chest, instinctively pulled back, his breath catching in his throat. He stepped away, his face flushed, a hint of panic in his eyes. Rosy, this isn't right. Rosy, unfazed, smiled softly, her eyes locked onto his. She didn't give up. Instead, she took a deep breath and, still maintaining her proximity, spoke in a serious tone. What isn't right, Ben? Is it because I'm only a caregiver? After what happened between us, I need to know, do we stand a chance? Benjamin began swallowing hard. About what happened, I'm not sure where I stand with all of this. It doesn't feel right. I never wanted you to think it was more than just... Rosy's heart was pounding, but she remained calm on the outside. However, a sense of unease persisted inside. She had been pushing him for so long, and it appeared that he was about to push back. More than what, Benjamin? She asked, her voice steady but sharp. More than the chemistry that's been building between us. His words faltered, and for a moment, he looked like he wanted to take them back. But Rosy didn't let him. She stepped forward, placing a hand gently on his arm. She said softly, her voice like velvet, Benjamin, don't overthink this. We're closer than you realize. And would you just let your feelings flow? The words hung in the air between them. Benjamin felt a flicker of doubt. It wasn't that he wanted to walk away. He didn't know if he could anymore. But hearing her speak so confidently, it made him question whether he could ever escape her grasp. His mind raced as he stared at her, his heart and his duty pulling in different directions. He knew the answer in his gut, but the words felt difficult to say. He glanced down, his jaw tightening. He thought to himself, I can't be with her. It would be wrong. I am the heir to the Wallace, the next Viscount of Ayrshire. My father would never allow it. A woman like Rosy, she is not from my world, I would be in trouble. The thought of his father's expectations, the weight of his lineage, all of it came crashing down on him. He had been raised with a clear vision of his future, one where duty and tradition meant more than personal desires. Rosy, despite everything she was, charming, beautiful, and clever, was not the woman who fit into that future. He took a deep breath, his mind made up, and he looked at Rosy with a firm expression. Rosy, he began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I've been thinking about this, and I need to be honest with you. I have no romantic intention for you. What happened between us was a mistake. It wasn't real. Rosy's face faltered for a split second, but she quickly masked it with a confident smile. She stepped back, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for a hint of doubt, a crack in his resolve. I don't understand, but why did you kiss me? She said, her voice strong, but her eyes softened with sincerity. From the moment I saw you, I've fallen in love with you, Ben. But now you are toying with my feelings. Benjamin recoiled slightly at her confession. His stomach twisted, and the guilt gnawed at him. He had never intended for things to go this far. He never imagined he would be the object of someone's affection in such a way. He was about to speak when she cut him off, her words coming faster now, her desperation rising. Benjamin, I love you. I truly do. And I'll do whatever it takes for you to see that. Her voice trembled with emotion as she reached out, her hand brushing his arm gently. Benjamin swallowed hard. His mind was a storm of confusion, regret, and yes, a small, painful part of him that wished things could be different. He stepped back from her, his gaze firm, but his voice tinged with sorrow. Rosy, please, erase that feeling. You can't be in love with me. It's not right. It can't be. He hesitated for a moment before continuing. And from now on, call me Mr. Benjamin. I think it's for the best. Rosy stood still, her heart pounding in her chest as his words sank in. A cold shiver ran through her, but she didn't show it. She simply nodded, her lips tightening into a thin line. The sting of rejection was sharp, but she wasn't going to give up. Not yet. Benjamin turned away from her, his back straight as he walked towards the house, each step further distancing himself from her. Rosy watched him go, her mind racing. From that day forward, Benjamin kept his distance, his interactions with Rosy becoming formal and distant, as though he were interacting with a stranger. But no matter how hard he tried, no matter how cold and distant he became, Rosy was always there, quietly watching, waiting for her chance.